as of this year, on April 18th, 2021, it will have been 35 years since Sally S. Heet was found murdered in Washington, D.C. She was found murdered in her apartment on April 18th, late in the morning on April 18th, 1986. There's a possibility that her murder may have happened in the evening of April the 17th, but it is recognized that the date of her passing is April 18th, 1986. On this show, Houstonic Live would like to do a introduction to Sally Heet, read some of the memorials and newspapers from that day and from a few days afterwards, and provide a remembrance of her, as well as provide information on how one can support a scholarship fund, which still exists in her name, as well as provide, if one should happen to have any additional information that might lead to the arrest of, or identification and arrest of those or persons responsible, will provide that information as well. As you might have surmised, her murder remains unsolved, and there are no suspects at this time. The scholarship information is at PRSPugetSound.org. That's Public Relations Society of America, PRSA, PugetSound.org/scholarships. That describes it as the Sally Heet Memorial Scholarship was established in 1986 in memory of a former member and good friend of PRSA Puget Sound. Sally Heet was a longtime Seattle area practitioner and graduate of the University of Washington School of Communications. At the time of her death on April, this was a typo, 16th, 1986, she was working in Washington, D.C. as press secretary for Senator Daniel Evans. Heet was one of the most influential press secretaries on Capitol Hill, self-possessed, confident, and professional. She was the victim of a senseless act of violence at her residence in Washington, D.C. This annual award is presented to an outstanding public relations student from a college or university in Washington State. We do have a page for her, for Sally Swisher Heet, born in 1950. The April 18th New York Times article is titled "Aide to Washington Senator is Found Stabbed to Death." So this ran in the evening of the day that she was found. And it reads as follows. Senator Daniel J. Evans, Republican of Washington, said his press secretary, Sally S. Heet, was found stabbed to death in her Capitol Hill apartment today. Mr. Evans said Miss Heet, 35 years old, formerly a resident of Seattle, was quote, killed apparently last night in her apartment, unquote. The senator said he had become concerned when Miss Heet failed to meet him and a reporter for breakfast. Miss Heet's stepbrother and a member of Mr. Evans' staff went to her apartment, where they found the body about 10:30 a.m., Mr. Evans, her boss, and the senator from the state of Washington said. He described Mrs. Heet as a close friend, lively, and vivacious. He said, "I'll miss her forever," unquote. She has been a part of a very, very close team. The whole office is in shock, unquote. Police officials said they had no suspects in the death. Miss Heet joined Mr. Evans' staff as a press secretary in 1983 after he took office on the death of Senator Henry Jackson. Side note, Henry Jackson died of an unexpected heart condition on the day of the Korean Airlines, which was accidentally shot down by by Russian Air Force. Before that, she worked as a vice president and manager of corporate communications for the Rainier National Bank. She worked earlier as an account executive for a Seattle public relations concern. Now, there's many excellent newspaper clippings and memorials available from the state of Washington archives. Here is one. It reads much the same with a little bit of additional information. This says, the press secretary of Washington, Senator Daniel J. Evans, was found murdered today in her Capitol Hill apartment about 6 blocks from her office in the Senate Hart Office building. Senator Evans, said at a somber press conference in his Seattle office at mid-afternoon that Sally S. Heet, age 35, was stabbed to death sometime between Wednesday night after she returned home. We all feel very much like a family, Evans said in a trembling voice. We will miss her forever. Heet's body was found in the apartment by her brother, Jim Hudson, an employee of the United States Labor Department and a member of Evans' staff, whom Evans did not identify after she failed to show up for work. There are many joyous moments and there are many sad moments, but this is one of the saddest, unquote, Evans said in recalling his feelings with the press over the years as a governor and then as a senator. Recall, Evans had been a longtime governor, very popular governor, Republican governor from the state of Washington for many years before becoming the senator. The District of Columbia police are investigating the death as a homicide, but have released few details. Police spokesmen indicate Heet died of multiple stab wounds. Bill Jacobs, the senator's chief of staff and one of Heet's closest friends, went to the apartment when he was notified that her body had been found and assisted police in the investigation. Evans was attending a Senate Foreign Relations Committee session on a proposed sale of arms to Saudi Arabia when he was notified. Evans said that Heet was last seen when she left her office around 8:30 p.m. Wednesday, which would be April 17th. Her body was discovered about 9:30 a.m. on Thursday. Her mailbox was open, quote, her mailbox was open and the mail was still there. So it looks like someone met up with her at that point, but I don't want to presume, unquote, Evans said. Evans said he had expected Heet to join him Thursday morning for a breakfast interview in the United States Capitol with Helen Dewar of the Washington Post. Quote, I was surprised when she didn't show up, he said. She is so very prompt, and probably it raised some warning signal that something was wrong, unquote. Heet was single and lived alone. Mark Murray, the press secretary for Representative Don Bonker, a Democratic congressman from Vancouver, Washington, said he lived in an apartment on the floor below Heet's apartment. Murray said he returned to the building around 10:30 p.m. Wednesday. Quote, I remember when I came home that her mailbox was open. He said Heet normally drove to work, even though she lived a short distance away, and had a parking space in the Senate building because of her concern over crime. Heet had been vice president and manager of corporate communications for the Rainier National Bank in Seattle before becoming Evans' press secretary in December of 1983. She helped organize the Republican senator's office after he was appointed to succeed the late Senator Henry M. Jackson after the Democratic senator's death, and remained a key member of Evans' staff after he was elected in a special election. Heet's mother lives in Indiana. She has a sister in Seattle and another brother in Los Angeles. Some additional photos of her are available. One person was ultimately identified as a potential suspect. He was brought in for questioning, and then after that, he was released. There was no further investigation. I don't believe there's been any additional suspects since then. stolen from us. And her boss, Senator Dan Evans, was the individual who did provide the eulogy for slain press secretary Sally Heet on April 24th, 1986. 250 colleagues, 250 people showed up for that particular event. I'm not aware of how hard Senator Daniel Evans pushed to find the murder of Sally Heet. There was a small reward fund set up. This was on April the 30th of 1986. At that time, they had only raised $5,000 goal as a reward for Sally Heet, press secretary of Slain's press secretary of Senator Daniel Evans. And this is a copy of the memorial, 1950-1986. So she was 35 years of age, as described, and she died away, passed 35 years ago from multiple stab wounds. She was born August 16th, 1950. For if you happen to have any information that could help with the arrest of identification of the person who may have been responsible for this, there is currently a $25,000 reward from the Washington police. The murder was the 500 block of E Street, and it's listed as Thursday, April 17th, 1986, as the date of murder. You can contact Detective Daniel Whalen at 202-277-9225 by cell, or the Homicide Branch at 202-645-9600.